Hello, everyone. I'm Mr. E.
And I am Mortimer the Authenticator, and we are the Duality of Man.
Today we're going to talk about chivalry, and I mean classic medieval chivalry. The uh, the kind of things that the knights used to follow, and the kind of things that really were defining, codes for life, and the kind of things that really, honestly, turned men into heroes in many stories.
Mm.
Uh, Obviously, the term chivalry in the modern parlance is used to refer to courtesy towards women, but back in the day, it was a lot more than that.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly, a lot more. And I think that if men today adopted the classic medieval chivalry, our society would be in a lot better place, and I feel like it would give them a sense of purpose and you know, sort of a guide in order to you know sort out the troubles of modern day life because, as I'm sure everybody's aware at this point, we have certainly gone awry somewhere.
Something went wrong in the machinery somewhere. We meant to improve the world, and all of a sudden, for the last decade or so, we've been regressing it instead. Also, pay no attention to that World War III looming behind the curtain.
Yes,
Clearly, has
we
nothing to do with anything.
here to distract you from your sense of impending doom. Let's see, let's give a brief definition of chivalry. Let's see, the code of chivalry was the code of conduct followed by the knights during the medieval period. It was developed between the 11th and 12th centuries. The late medieval code of century, however, arose from the idealization brought by the synthesis of Germanic and Roman martial traditions that often involved military bravery, training, and service to others. Yet, according to common definitions, the code of chivalry was simply the rules and customs of medieval knights. Others defined it as the qualifications of a knight. These qualifications included virtues of courtesy, generosity, and valor. Let's see. There are multiple interpretations of the code of chivalry throughout different time periods and different cultures. Let's see. I have a number of articles pulled up. Let's see. This one of this version of the Code of Chivalry is one of my favorites from the Song of Roland. It's an epic poem about the paladins of Charlemagne.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. The Code of Chivalry described in the Song of Roland. Let's see. To fear God and maintain his church, to serve the liege lord in valor and faith, to protect the weak and defenseless, to give succor to widows and orphans, to refrain from the wanton giving of offense, to live by honor and for glory, to despise pecuniary reward, to fight for the welfare of all, to obey those placed in authority, to guard the honor of fellow knights, to eschew unfairness, meanness, and deceit, to keep faith, at all times to speak the truth, to preserve to the end in any enterprise begun, to respect the honor of women, never to refuse a challenge from an equal, never to turn the back upon a foe.
Sir Jordan Peterson, is that you several centuries early?
Yes, well, I don't believe that Jordan Peterson is himself an avowed Christian, but I myself find this to be like a great series of mantras to live by. There's only one caveat that I might have an issue with, that being the one saying to obey those placed in authority. Because, as I'm sure you're all aware, the people who are currently in authority of this country are very much untrustworthy, if not outright incompetent.
Yeah, therein lies the problem. When you put norms for norm's sake or authority for authority's sake at any point in your moral system, that is, to paraphrase the narrator meme, that is usually the moment where every society realizes they done fucked up.
Yeah, I mean,
It-
to be fair, back when this code was first crafted, those placed in authority were the nobles whose fate were tied to the fate of their lands and the
yeah, the
people.
noblesse oblige.
So, if the people were suffering, you know, that didn't fare well for the nobles in a variety of ways.
No, that
Either
was a good recipe for getting your head in a basket without the bother of the body attached to it.
either the nobles were suffering because the peasants were suffering, or the nobles were prosperous upon the back of the people, and that was a quick way to an uprising.
Yeah, in which case they were about to get a peasant axe upside their head. But yeah.
Yeah. And another one, to respect the honor of women. Obviously, you should respect, people, but I feel like women then did a much better job of attempting to preserve their honor.
I mean, I suppose in theory, but there is this incidental little problem of as in the Middle Ages as now, humans are sort of just innately wired to do that, and so not tone policing the thoughts of dead scribes or nothing here, but can any society please, for the love of God, remember that men exist on occasion, and remind people, oh wait, men are also human, derp. Because, like, again, not trying to judge the past by modern problems or anything, but it seems to have been a reoccurring problem that everyone's first instinct was, oh, by the way, protect the women, and nobody remembered, oh, wait, men also.
I mean, it also says to protect the weak and defenseless. That is not specified upon sex.
I mean, no, but here's my only existing problem with this code, as far as I see it, apart from obviously the necessity of Christian thing, but eh. Um, that one I can chalk up to context and have a good day, but like some of these seem somewhat subjective and seem almost to be by the discretion of the knight in question. So what he would consider honor, what he would consider weak and defenseless, and so on. Like,
One would think that the whether or not we believe is honor and just would also depend greatly upon the culture at the time.
yeah, and therein lies the problem. Maybe it's just the philosopher in me, but whenever I see a code of edicts or a code of honor like this, it's like, can I get more defined terms, please? Because if nothing else, the recent redefinition of every goddamn thing by way of postmodern deconstructionalism has taught us the importance of maintaining consistent and rational definitions. Specificity is important in such things.
Believe me, I would also be able to somehow, you know, speak to the people who, wrote these, guidelines and who lived in these times and who crafted these epic tales. Unfortunately, that's not something that's currently possible. But I do believe that I don't believe that it was up to like each individual knight's interpretation because if you leave it at that, then how can you call someone's actions unjust if he himself believes it to be just? So I think there was a prevailing definition of things like honor and justice.
Right. It's just it's again the annoyance of, as much as one would like to build one's life out of something like this, the more axiomatic the statement, the more specific about the definitions of things you have to be, because otherwise it's up to interpretation, and God only knows what will come from that. Like I've even seen an SJW or two try to make the argument, the few that do actually care about like medieval stuff or claim to, they might be tourists, but I've even seen people hyper focus on that refrain from giving offense, line and turned it into this is why we are allowed to thought police you and tone police you, because you're not supposed to give offense if you can avoid it.
To refrain from the wanton giving of offense. So if
Well,
you're just going around being a jackass, then yeah, that's obviously disallowed. But I'm sure that in certain cases where someone has proven themselves to be a wastrel or a scoundrel, like
you see my point, and that's why I'm like, someone probably should have hammered out more details here, because other, like, I mean, for God's sake, we basically have a document that does go out of its way to define its terms in the form of the Constitution, and people still are like, what does in order to maintain a well-regulated militia mean? It means in case the government gets asinine and authoritarian, we can regulate your ass by way of revolution. That's what that means. But apparently, it lost on like half the population at this point.
I mean, and also, I mean, like those insufferable like leftists, they can't use the code of chivalry to try and say that you can't give offense when they completely ignore the other 10, which is at all times speak the truth.
Yeah, but then there gets to be the conversation about when my truth, and and it's just, again, specificity and sadly enough, autistic attention to detail is sometimes warranted in these sorts of things, because lest your great great ex great descendants twist your words and use it for their own ends, like so many other freaking things.
Now, there's also another code, but this isn't actually say like a code of actions you should take. More, this is a list of virtues that you should aspire to. Now, this code is described by the Duke of Burgundy in the 14th century,
Hmm.
and this is actually comes after the code that we previously talked about. The code in the Song of Rome was, I believe, written in the 8th century. So
Hmm.
the one that came after is faith, charity, justice, sagacity, prudence, temperance, resolution, truth, liberality, diligence, hope, valor.
Hmm.
Now, what do you think of it, ascribing virtues to follow rather than specific actions?
I think it's certainly better, and is more universal and therefore more applicable. Um, I don't necessarily have a problem with any of those things, more or less, and I can't think of any honest individual who would. But there is still I mean, obviously there is an overriding ethos, but it's still like, there seems to be a little bit of subjective leeway there, and again, maybe it's the I in my ideal world, everyone would write everything out in philosophical treatise form so we could have like specific definitions, but I understand it was the Middle Ages, and these were fighting men more than they were scholars, although usually
Yeah,
there was at least a little bit of both.
you have to make it something that they'll remember.
Yeah. So like, I get why I would have been the scribe that would have wanted spurgy detail and probably would have gotten the shit kicked out of him. But still, as someone looking back almost 1,000 years hence, um, it probably would have fared better in terms of lasting longer if it had been nailed down a little bit more finely. Which again is why the Constitution is great, although even the Constitution is not immune to subjectification, even though it shouldn't be.
Let me ask you: Are there any virtues on this list that you would take out, or any that you would add?
Um, for a knight, no. For a person, I'd have to rethink it a little bit.
No. The the thing is that these were the codes that the knight were meant to live up to, but obviously these people, the emperor considers fictitious by today's standards. Perhaps
Hmm.
that doesn't mean that it isn't worth. Doesn't mean that these aren't virtues worth following.
Yeah,
Now,
it's like the old adage. You might not be able to reach the stars, but you might eventually hit the moon. I.e., you might not get to the perfect platonic epitome of any of these, but you're going to get significantly closer to them than you would if you just were irrelevant.
is that your mom?
Yeah, she handed me my meds.
Ah, what? But yeah. So a lot of the knights, you know, even though they strove to, keep to these codes, many of them fell short. They were humans, just like we were. Although I'm sure that they did not face a lot of the same societal problems that we did necessarily, though they did have their own problems.
Hmm.
But
Life will always be, life will always have problems, but I hope in the future the problems that we have in life are at least less stupid or absurd. That would be great. Because that's the problem with the modern world above just about everything else. It's not that we have so many more problems or so many worse problems than the past. It's that the problems we have are so absurd and patently stupid on their face.
let me see. There is something about what I just said that I would like to read about. Let's see. Let's see. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Let's see. You're familiar with Mallory, who wrote Le Morte d'Arthur?
Yes.
Let's see. Mallory takes care to show just how difficult, if not impossible, the code proves for many of the knights, as well as how it can be easily corrupted through circumstances and human folly. Mallory's collected stories contrast the results of following the code of chivalry with what happens when a knight breaks that code or succumbs to temptation. Sir Gawain, for instance, refuses to grant mercy to a man who asks for it, thus breaking part of the code, and, as his lover hurls herself forward to protect him, accidentally kills the lady, carrying the shame of this act with him for the rest of his adventures. Conversely, Lancelot always grants mercy to a knight that asks for it, underlining his characterization as an honorable knight in battle, if not in spiritual purity. Indeed, Mallory's view of the knights and of Arthurian society in general often verges on the cynical as he shows how various knights succumb to the temptations of lust or of the selfish search for glory. For instance, only Galahad, who steers clear of both, mostly because he is so young and is also divinely fated to do so, can attain the Holy Grail, while the other knights are not pure enough. That is the key. That is, they lack the greatest honor and chivalry.
Hmm. But honestly, I don't even want to call Mallory cynical because I see that as his attempt to be honest.
Realistic.
Because again, like just because you won't become the platonic good of any of these virtues doesn't mean that you're not better off with it at least a little bit of each. Like, okay, in the same way, if you put as much sugar as you wanted into every baked good, it would be oversaturated and overly sweet. But no sugar in any baked good ever, and your baked goods are going to wind up shitty.
I mean, at that point, just make bread.
Yeah. Well, even then. bread usually has at least a little bit of sugar in it, or salt, or some other seasoning. Like, just because you aren't as good as you would be if you had the perfect amount of these things, doesn't mean you aren't made better by including as much of these things as is reasonably possible.
Yes, and it's also shown in these stories that you know giving in to these moments of weakness can lead to some of the people's darkest moments, like as it mentions here, Sir Gawain, when he refuses to grant mercy to a man who asked for it. Like, Gawain was a knight; it would have been well within his purview to grant mercy to somebody who had already surrendered, but he did not. And as a result, the woman he loves tries to stop him from killing this man, and he kills her as a result. And now that's something that he has to live with.
Consequences.
Yeah. And Lancelot, we all know his story. He failed to be, spiritually pure. He failed to, I think, one, be loyal, as in loyal to his king, and also to um, keep the honor of women, in that he should not have been part of this wife having an affair.
Yeah, the fling with Gwen really did him in.
Yeah. It led to,
And if nothing else, that just proves even the greatest of knights are susceptible to the woman card. Again, that's why my MRA senses started tingling when it was like, keep the honor of the women. What about the honor of the men and the children and everyone else too?
yeah. And, we all know what happened as a result of that. It basically, you know, led to the downfall of Camelot, the death of Arthur, and it led to Lancelot being so ashamed at his actions that I think he lived out the rest of his life in a monastery somewhere.
I In some versions of the story, it's Gwen who gets shipped off to the monastery somewhere. Although in some versions of the story, she's burned at the stake. So this is one of those. It depends on which version of Arthur you happen to be reading.
Yeah,
But it didn't go well for either of them in any case.
yeah,
The only saving grace, literally, for Lancelot is his son would eventually triumph where he failed and get the Holy Grail. Go Galahad.
yeah. Galahad, Chad of Knights.
Based Galahad.
He actually is my favorite, and even one of my favorite poems is Galahad by Lord Alfred Tennyson.
Mm. I mean, yeah, I don't pay that much attention to the knights themselves usually. Obviously, for obvious reasons, I'm a Merlin simp. But but yeah, Galahad is awesome.
Yeah. I was actually listening to some Arthurian legend earlier in the week, and Merlin telling Uther to, it's totally fine to have sex with this woman, only at precisely this time, at this day, at this evening, conveniently right after her husband has died, so it technically wouldn't be adultery.
Yeah, again, honestly, for all that Arthur is cool and awesome and important and whatnot, the Arthurian legends really are a two-horse race between Merlin and Morgan most of the time. It's them puppeteering and counter puppeteering each other, and the knight and king are pieces on the chessboard, more or less. Because it was Merlin's ambition that basically that he instilled in Arthur that eventually rose to the point of Camelot. And it was Morgana being able to conceive Mordred by magic, and then also raise a counter army that basically ended up tearing it down eventually.
Let's see. There's also Sir Gawain. Did you see the movie The Green Knight?
I did. I really enjoyed it. I would like to see more Arthurian legends portrayed in a similar way.
What did you think about the moral of the story and how it relates to chivalry?
The keeping one's oath thing.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's yeah, and while we're on the topic of like medieval and pseudo medieval honor codes, I think we can tie in to some degree the code of chivalry and the code of hospitality, because almost every culture places a high premium on the concept of hospitality. I mean there are Roman myths where Zeus basically dresses up as a hermit and tests people on their hospitality. Same thing with the Norse and Odin. He does a similar thing, and so on and so forth. Hospitality is one of those things that I don't really think is focused on all that much anymore. Hospitality or like oath making and breaking, but like I think it deserves more focus in the modern world. I think we've lost something by basically completely foregoing the concept of hospitality almost.
yeah. In regards to, I will speak about the code of hospitality in a second. I just want to talk about the Green Knight. In the story, Sir Gawain accepts a challenge from this Green Knight, and he says that any blow that is given to me, I will give back to you in 1 year's time. And in the, I don't know how it goes in the original legend, but in the movie, Gawain cuts off his head, but the Green Knight, being magic, picks up his head.
Does not die. Yeah.
Yeah, he does not die. He picks up his head, and he reminds him, "In 1 year, I will return to give you what you have given me." And so a year passes, and Sir Gawain has to go on a journey to meet the Green Knight once again in order to finish their deal. And during this time, he meets a man and his wife, and I believe his mother. And the man lets him stay there for a short time, only under the deal that whatever you are given in my house, you must give back to me. And so it eventually leads to one, him having sex with the wife, and also the wife giving him this magic sash meant to protect him from harm, so that if he, when he meets the Green Knight, he won't be killed. But in the story, he has a vision where he meets the Green Knight, and instead of accepting the blow that was, that he promised to receive, he instead runs away. Eventually, he lives, becomes king, and he ultimately grows up not to be, I think, a king that he himself would be proud of. He is always so he is always so careful. He is so careful to the point that he abandons the code of chivalry in lieu of safety.
See, in the original story, in the original story, um, Sir Gawain actually does go to meet the knight as well he should, and and the knight basically gives him a tap on the neck with the sword instead of full on decapitating him, because he was actually willing to face what he thought would be a fatal blow in order to keep his word, irrespective of the fact that it might kill him.
Yeah, that's actually what happens in the movie. If you remember at the end, he, after like having this vision of basically him
It's like,
growing into
oh no,
strength,
I'm not doing that.
yeah,
So
he realized that he doesn't want to become this, and so he tells the Green Knight to wait, and then he takes off the magic sash, and basically giving up whatever safety or protection he has, ready to face whatever consequences may come. And then the Green
mhm.
Knight puts down his axe and then runs his finger across Gawain's throat, saying that, "All right, you're done."
Yeah.
But regarding the code of hospitality that you mentioned, I think that's also very important because you know when the code of hospitality, when you're inviting somebody into your home, you are essential. Hello, you just blinked out there for a sec.
Yeah, I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
So when you invite someone into your home, like a kind of pact is struck between you that you will not do any damage to the person that you are inviting in. You will not allow any damage to be done to them while they're in your home, and the person that you invite in will do no damage to you.
Yeah, the obligations of both host and guest.
And I think that's why you know. I think that's why we still have the phrase: if you're gonna do something, take it outside.
Yeah, because you're not supposed to besmirch the space of someone's home or even business, depending on how you want to spin it.
Yeah, because like if you're both invited, like say two conflict is breaking out between invited guests, then the owner is obliged to not allow either of you come to harm so long as you are there in your home.
So you need to take it outside, otherwise it would be dishonoring the host.
Yeah,
Also, especially considering that, uh, again, going back to the code of hospitality, you are almost accountable for how your own guests behave in your household. So
yeah,
if your guests behave badly, that actually reflects badly on you as the host.
yes, because the people you invite in your home is a reflection of the people that you yourself are choosing to associate with. So the way they behave reflected upon your character because these are the people that you surround yourself with.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think while we still have a view that you are going to treat the people who are guests in your home well, I feel like too many people feel like they have no obligation to respect the host of the house.
See, I've not seen much of either end of the hospitality spectrum in recent years. I think people have almost forgotten the ghost, or I, I bungled the words host and guest together. The host and guest roles altogether. But yes, especially like I I shudder to think some of the things I've seen at like Airbnbs and so on, or at concerts and so on. Like maybe this is just a generational thing, but whenever like someone whenever my classmates and I went to on a field trip or a school trip or something, there was always the implicit understanding of you clean up the trash you brought with you and take it out with you when you go, so that you're not leaving things for the hotel staff or the person who's putting you up, to clean up. But I've noticed a lot recently, like Zoomers and Gen Alpha just like leave things where they find, or leave trash where it falls, basically, like
Yeah,
mass litter. It's kind of ridiculous.
I've noticed it as well. Like how I was raised, you like if someone's coming to your house, you be a good host. You like offer them, food, entertainment, what have you, drinks, and that if
Hmm.
you are going to somebody's home, you you clean up after yourself, and if they're cleaning up after you, then you offer to help them clean.
Yeah,
And it's all
everyone puts their best foot forward because we all understand the aegis we're under.
yeah, and you never ever disrespect somebody in their own home.
No.
But what do you think? Like that's how we were raised. But like, what do you think the reason is it that this coming generation appears to not really care about being hospitable?
I just think it's never crossed their minds, a lot of them. And I think a lot of them, especially the most egregious of them, are rich, spoiled, upper middle class cunts, not to mince words, who did always have either the help, i.e., actual like servants and shit, depending on how wealthy they were, or that helicopter parents would just make things disappear. Like it's similar to the logic of people who are like, food comes from the store. I don't understand why we need farmers. It's like, has no one ever educated you on how any of this stuff works? And moreover, even if no one went out of their way to educate you on it, did you not ever feel the spark of curiosity to figure shit out for yourself? Because that was the thing. Nothing like that was ever really explained to me as a kid. But when I was curious about shit like that, I went and found it for myself. I watched educational TV shows. I read books. I read the encyclopedia. When we got a computer, I started looking shit up online. Like, th- this is this is what we like. Even this is the thing. I don't want to blame society at large entirely here. At least some of the issue has to be. It doesn't matter um if society is willing to handhold you and give you the answers, you should have at least enough curiosity to want to know things. It's like when I don't know if you've seen the TikTok, but someone a like pretty blonde young millennial chick buys an old radio and she's absolutely flabbergasted, or I guess she was a Zoomer chick. She's absolutely flabbergasted by the fact that this radio takes tapes and she thinks it's a like Scotch tape dispenser or something. And I'm like, okay, I grew up at a time when VHSs changed to DVDs, and I still fucking knew what a cassette tape was and what an 8-track tape was.
I mean, is she just not aware of things that occurred before?
Again, it's not even the lack. It's not the lack of knowledge that I'm lamenting here. It's the lack of curiosity, like, or just basic common sense. Like, are you not even aware of the idea of, like, you would think just from the knowledge that CDs used to be a thing, most people would be able to go, oh, this must have been how they listened to music before they had CDs or records or whatever. But then again, I'm weird. Like, I've collected antiques since I was a really little kid, largely because my great grandma would basically give me whatever I wanted when I went to her house. But
Wait,
that's
so
neither here nor there. But
wait,
like
so
I had been collecting antiques pretty much since I was a little kid, and because I grew up at this transitional period where like VHSs changed to changed to CDs or DVDs, and CDs gave way to um, digital downloads and stuff, it made me aware of, like, for lack of a better phrasing, the progression of history, and it made me almost like past focused. Like, I wanted to know, okay, if this is the latest in a long line of things that have progressed up until this point, what is there in the vast, expanse of time in the other direction? Where have we come from? But I guess the modern world just doesn't, or at least this current generation doesn't have a bunch of that. I mean, I'm sure there are some Zoomers that are curious and things, but I'm just saying in terms of how many of them there seem to be relative to the generation that we grew up with. Like,
now let me ask you, this device, like, was it a radio that had a cassette player in it, or
I think so. That it was like a TikTok video,
so
and and
that's
this woman had bought like an antique radio, and she wondered to the audience of TikTok, why would a radio need a tape dispenser? I guess it's handy to have your Scotch tape right there next to your radio, but why would you need it? And I'm like, and also, by the way, while we're kvetching about the younger generation and not having respect for like history or curiosity or anything, you have Google. You have something that I didn't have until I was, I think, like 6 or 7. Um, why wouldn't you just Google things that you don't know the answers to in that way? Sure, you might find some misinformation, ooga booga, on occasion, but like, how much effort does it take to find like the production model or whatever and look at it and be like, oh, cassette tapes were a thing. It's not just a lack of curiosity, it's that you have more resources than anyone has ever had throughout history to find information, and they just don't use it.
I mean, even like putting that aside, you would think that by the nature of what she knows the device to be, she could infer its other uses.
Functions, yeah.
Yeah.
Again, it's like you knew, or at least most Zoomers, I think, still know that CDs were a thing, and surely you must have known there was something before that. So could you not put two and two together and go, wait, they recorded music on tapes? Novel concept. Then again, there are people who still get confused by VHSs. So maybe we've just gotten old.
To veer away from modernity for a bit,
Thank
now
God.
there's actually something I want to talk to you about. And this is regarding the Song of Roland, the French story of Charlemagne's legendary knights.
Mm-hmm.
So in the story, uh, he's fighting, I believe, the Saracens because he and the Paladins were Charlemagne's rear guard while they were heading home from war, and they were ambushed. And you know, he and his knights were extremely skilled, but they were vastly outnumbered. And Roland could have used his horn to call for aid while Charlemagne was still relatively close, but his pride is what got in the way. Like he thought that he should be able to handle this with just them. He should not need to bother his king with this. And eventually, while they put up a hell of a fight, they were, most of them were cut down until Roland eventually started to, he blew his horn 3 times, and I believe it's the third time he blew it so hard that it actually killed him. And it was only then that Charlemagne realized that there was trouble because, to his credit, Charlemagne did notice something was amiss the first time he heard it, but there was a traitor in his midst trying to say that no, everything's fine, just ignore it.
Time is a flat circle.
But it just goes to show that the knights, as great as they were and with all their virtues and strength, the sin of pride still ended up being Roland's downfall.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just enough to follow the code of chivalry. You also have to be wary of, like, say, sins like pride, or I guess lust in the case of Lancelot.
This reminds me of Benjamin Franklin. He, in his youth, tried to create a chart for himself to basically score himself on the 7 heavenly virtues, and he eventually gave up the project because he realized that if he ever truly accomplished any of these virtues, he would be boastful of them. And the last of the 7 heavenly virtues, of course, is humility, which would throw humility right out the window. So he basically just settled for the I can't boast of having accomplished any of these, but I'm tolerably better than I was previously, basically.
Mm. Yes. There's actually one thing that I want to talk about, but unfortunately I forgot to look it up just now. Are you familiar with the 9 worthies?
Not off the top of my head. They sound familiar.
See, the 9 worthies are 9 historical, scriptural, and legendary men of distinction who personified the ideals of chivalry established in the Middle Ages, whose lives were deemed a valuable study of aspirants to chivalric status. All were commonly referred to as princes regardless of their historical title. There are 3 pagans, 3 Jews, and 3 Christians who make up the 9 worthies.
Hmm.
The 9 worthies, the 3 pagans being Hector of Troy, Alexander the Great, and Julius Caesar. The three Jews, Joshua, David, and Judas Maccabeus. Not the Judas who betrayed Christ. Like this one was actually a really good dude. The other one kind of ruined the name a bit.
Well, I mean that is the problem with the biblical narratives. Just like then, just like now, there were, I'm sure, common names. Like there were how many Marys, how many Sarahs, how many Joshuas. Technically, the actual original Hebrew name Jesus was given was Yeshua, which more accurately translates into English as Joshua. But there's already a major Joshua in the Old Testament, so they went with the Greek transliteration.
Let's see. There are also three Christian kings: King Arthur, Charles Magnus, otherwise known as Charlemagne,
Mm-hmm.
and Godfrey of Bouillon. Let's see. There were. I'm trying to find a basically. I'm trying to find why they were considered worthy, but doesn't seem to be in this article here. So I'll keep looking. But what do you think about some of the characters mentioned among the worthy, like Hector and Caesar?
I mean, I don't know which of the virtues they were associated with, so I can't really judge their placement. Because there's a lot that you could say about Julius Caesar, and there's a lot you could say about Alexander. I don't know which qualities they're being lauded for in this instance. I am glad to see the relatively even split rather than it just being like biblical figures or something.
I think reading here, I believe that Hector was considered worthy because he fought honorably to defend his home. I mean, the invasion of Troy was in no way his doing; it was his idiotic younger brothers.
Yeah.
But he fought honorably to defend his home, and he fought honorably against Achilles, even though he ended up dying.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. I believe it says Julius Caesar was the embodiment of the Roman Empire and the Pax Romana that followed its global conquest. It was this peace that eventually enabled Christianity to take root. Christ came as the Prince of Peace at the point in time when the Romans had conquered the world and established their peace in it. It was the Roman peace built on the achievement of pagan chivalry, children, Greek, and Roman, that made possible the journeys of the apostles, their evangelization of the Gentiles, and the establishment of the Catholic civilization.
Hmm.
So I believe it's saying that without Julius Caesar, you would have no Roman Empire, and therefore no stable, you know,
Right. But
hegemony for
which
Christianity.
of the virtues was he associated with, though, in terms of the chivalric code there?
I don't know because it doesn't assign the non-worthies to one specific interpretation of the chivalric code.
Huh.
It just says these people, these non-men are deemed worthy of renown and respect.
Hmm.
Let's see, let's see, let's see. For the Jews, it says that Joshua was the leader of the Jews after Moses, is considered the idealized general who led the Israelites to conquer the Holy Land. David, who was the anointed king and Messiah of the Hebrew people who slew Goliath, and whose line was forever chosen by God to lead his people. And the final Jewish worthy was Judas of the Maccabees, a priest who led the Maccabees in revolt against the Seleucid Empire. Judas's restoration of Jewish worship at the Temple of Jerusalem is still celebrated each year with Hanukkah. So this is the guy who actually led to the celebration of Hanukkah.
Hmm.
Let's see. Together, the three Jewish worthies remind the audience that the Old Testament is the story of God's chosen nation, which was the spiritual vessel of his purpose for mankind, and through whose service of the one true God, the way was made ready for the coming of Christ. So this is in relation to the Old Testament,
Hmm.
because I'm sure you read through the various iterations of the code that we saw. Christianity was a big part of medieval chivalry.
Yeah.
Let's see, and let's go on to the Christian worthies. The final three worthies are King Arthur, Charlemagne, and Godfrey Bullion. They represent the new law of the Catholic civilization in which chivalry was flourishing. The idyllic King Arthur was the quintessential Christian king, ever in the pursuit of justice, honor, and the Holy Grail. He was beloved in the Middle Ages as he is today. Charlemagne founded the Holy Roman Empire, which would encompass much of France, Germany, and the Low Countries. In 800, he was crowned the Holy Roman Emperor, the first in 3 centuries following the collapse of the Western Roman Empire. Charlemagne was the protector of Christianity, especially of the papacy in Rome.
He also was apparently a really big fan of literacy.
I had not read that about Charlemagne, though it would not surprise me.
Apparently, obviously, relatively, but he did insist on learning to read and write, and I believe he also insisted on it for his courtiers as well. So, yay, Charlemagne.
See, the ninth worthy is the most contemporary edition. Godfrey of Bouillon was a Frankish knight who helped lead the First Crusade to recapture the Holy Land. Godfrey was briefly the ruler of the Christian kingdom of Jerusalem, which lasted from 1099 to 1187. Godfrey only reigned for 1 year. In 1100, he died either by being struck by an arrow, by contracting an illness, or by being poisoned with an apple. Accounts vary. His inclusion was important to the message and to the allure of the Nine Worthies. Godfrey was by far the most recent recruit into the circle of the Nine Worthies. He more effectively than any of the others symbolized the fact that the story of chivalry's divine mission in the world was still in process, and that the mission was an urgent and contemporary one, and that there was no reason why, with the Nine, all the sieges of the first circle of chivalrous honor should be regarded as occupied.
Hmm.
It's showing that he was included to show that even as late in the game as it was, that chivalry was still important and was still a thing that you should be striving for.
Mm-hmm.
So
The mission may have gotten a little off track in recent millennia, guys. Sorry.
yeah, but there are still people who you know find chivalry to be a worthy path to follow. Um, I know you're familiar with the YouTuber Shadiversity.
Yeah, everybody loves Shad and his big stick energy.
Did you see the video he made regarding the problems with men in society? Because it was a very good video.
Um, no, the closest thing to anything like men's rightsy I saw from him was the Barbie review, where he did sort of abide by the. It, he seemed to disagree that the Barbie movie was accidentally based. I maintain that we as men's rights advocates should take that as a white pill, that people came away from it seeing Ken as the good guy.
Well, I'll try and find this video for you because he did a very good, just straightforward talk about the issues that men are having today with you know lacking purpose and not knowing what they should do with his life. And he talks about his life and growing up in the Mormon church, and how the thing that gives him his life purpose, is his wife, his children, his family, his faith, and how he really wants that for other people because it is so critically important to him and how much it has, fueled him throughout his life, and that he wants other men to attain the kind of peace and the kind of happiness that he has had in his life, and to know that it is attainable no matter how difficult it may seem at the moment, that these things that you want, the things that have traditionally made men happy and given their life meaning and purpose, that even though it seems like extremely difficult now, it is still
Well, but
achievable.
that's the really ironic thing. I think most men generally do still know what they want and would like to go and get it. It's just in some ways it's not necessarily even men looking for purpose. They mostly come to terms with what they want and what their purpose is. It's just very often that purpose is denied to them on purpose.
Yeah, we have, well, not we, our society has arranged itself in a way that goes against the natural flow of things in pursuit of its own sort of twisted, idealized, um,
Utopia, only 1 million dead people away, most of whom will be men, don't you fret.
not even, well, yes, that, but also just its twisted, idealized notion of the human being. Not even necessarily men or women, but just basic baseline singular human unit.
People can be tabula rasa, therefore we can make them whatever we want, and anyone who resists us making them whatever we want is clearly just a bad person and too short-sighted or too stupid to know the good that we're offering them. Is literally the Borg. It's don't worry, your biological and technological distinctiveness will be added to our own. There's nothing to worry about.
Yes, they treat humans like basic units of labor and function, rather than people with desires for peace, family, happiness, you know, and
Let alone individuation and the desire to be left well the fuck alone.
I think it has also distorted our view of what a good life is, so that we are, instead of focusing on maybe even not necessarily having a whole lot, but still having the things that are important, like friends, family, you know a home, a job that even doesn't make you a whole lot of money, you find purpose in and enjoy, in exchange for just pure consumerism. That if you don't have these things, if you're not doing these things, then how can you possibly be happy?
Well, and it's gotten so bad that even someone like Andrew Tate, who is rather consumerist in his ethos, um, is a radical for even allowing that men can get that kind of consumerist comfort. Because here's the really ironic part. Even insofar as we're tethered more to consumerism, which we can have a conversation about whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing or indifferent thing or what have you. But even insofar as we're tethered to consumerism, a lot of men are told, "Don't you consume too much. That's there for your betters to consume. It's for your betters to be lavished nice things on. Buy things for your girlfriend or sister or daughter or anyone anyone that isn't you. And if you realize that men are the largest demographic in a given industry, and you try to exert your influence in that industry to make good things happen to your favorite art or your favorite form of entertainment or what have you, that also makes you a toxic person. And God forbid you follow in the footsteps of Andrew Tate and actually pursue a life that will lead to some definition of success. Men have been successful for far too long and have fucked up the world. It's our turn now, damn it.
I feel like a lot of men, like, there are always going to be some men who are so goal driven that they're willing to make all the necessary sacrifices in order to in order to make it to the top. But there are a lot of men who just aren't willing to basically kill themselves at work just to get the top spot. And, you know, unfortunately, we live in a culture where unfortunately, if you don't have a lot of, recognition or, wealth or, renown, then like if you say like want a, wife and a family, like unfortunately in our materialistic culture, like a lot of people will just, completely overlook you.
It's even worse than that. We've gotten so bad that even if you do make all the necessary sacrifices and make it to the top, the only thing that will await you in a lot of cases is a giant target painted on your back because someone somewhere believes that you didn't obtain that position honorably, and therefore you are the bourgeois, you are the thing we are rebelling against, you are the patriarchy. Meanwhile, if you don't make any effort to succeed, then you are a not real man TM, and you are an incel, and you are a toxic person, and you are a beta male, a man child, blah 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 blah. So opt out, become a sigma male, a MGTOW, an incel, what have you, and you're the devil, and succeed to the point of being at the top of the hierarchy, and you are the literal definition of evil to a lot of people. How exactly does that work? Strive to succeed and actually succeed, you will be the devil with a target painted on you. Fail to succeed, but still strive to succeed, then you're useless and a not real man and a beta male. And just straight up opt out of society altogether or opt out of the rat race, and you are so immoral scum that we use incel like a slur in and of itself. Oops. Is it any wonder why men are dissatisfied with the way the modern world is working? So if I succeed, then I fail. If I fail, then I still fail. And if I don't play the game at all, then I'm the devil. Wouldn't you go ahead and know that?
That's why I think people could use a dose of chivalry nowadays, because chivalry would push you to succeed, but not for the sake of your own aggrandizement. It would be for the sake of, you know, family and being able to protect and provide for those that care about and are dependent upon you.
Mm-hmm.
Which, which
Still
I
gives lie to the whole patriarchy concept, because as we've gone over a bunch of times on this channel, most of the time when men held overt power, they wielded it on other people's behalf, not their own. That's why this oppressor oppressed nonsense makes no sense. And again, lest you believe that the yes dear phenomena just began with 20th century sitcoms, don't you dare tell me that in the era before suffrage, a man didn't vote for his family and wasn't very often told by his wife, this is the way you will vote, or you will be sleeping on the couch for the remainder of whatever term we're voting for.
I recently got into a discussion with someone about the nature of men, and I said that, as men, like, we don't really require all that much in order to maintain us. Just, a roof, food, a place to sleep, and a bit of entertainment is enough to get most of us by. But, if you're going to go, really far and, seek, great achievements, it's it should be for something that you value more than just yourself. And the exact words I used were, as men, what is the point of all this labor if you cannot protect and provide for those you love? And, that not necessarily even be like a direct family. It could be like, say you have like a community that depends on you, or say like you're doing it to protect your like parents or siblings or what have you. It's just men. I feel like we need something, you know, more than just our own, desires, you know, to to push forward on things.
I mean that's true, but we haven't even gotten to step one. Most men aren't even allowed to pursue their own desires anymore, lest they be hashtag me too'd into oblivion. And if they refuse to be hashtag me too'd into oblivion, then they're the new Emmanuel Goldstein, to make a 1984 reference. The vitriol they spew towards Andrew Tate and Jordan Peterson is perfect evidence of that. Like, whether you're on Tate's side of that or Jordan Peterson's side of that or a little bit of both or a little bit of neither, like the fact that they hate those two so much, and it must be said, I've seen them infighting recently. I've seen Jordan Peterson take some pot shots at Andrew Tate and Andrew Tate and his brother firing back. But we aren't even existing in a world where men can be hedonistic in the way we haven't even gotten to step one of take care of your own personal needs, let alone then pursuing the other side of it, which is, building lasting connections and so on. Largely because men do try to seek companionship, usually from women, and it doesn't go well. It really, really doesn't go well. It goes rather spectacularly wrong in every conceivable way.
There are women out there who do love and care for the men in their lives and who do greatly appreciate them. But while those women do exist, it is becoming increasingly harder to find them.
Yeah, it's a needle in a haystack situation.
And
And meanwhile, all the hay in this metaphor are fighting over like the top percent of the people digging through the hay.
yes, and also a lot of women nowadays complain about men becoming you know wastrels, them being lazy, unmotivated. Well, the thing that used to motivate men to do better would be to provide for a family and to make sure that they are secure. Because if it's just us, like it doesn't really take that. Like I said, it doesn't really take that much to keep men satisfied.
And lest we forget, there are a bunch of female wastrels, but you would be hogtied if you ever actually admitted to that. But there are women who are just as, if not considerably more, consumerist and um atomized and isolated and everything, and only out for their own self-interest. And I hate to burst this bubble, but if being a wastrel and being only out for yourself and only out for your definition of happiness is a bad thing, then surely it should be a bad thing for everyone and not just the male half of the species. But if you criticize a woman for being a coomer, then you're a misogynist, or you're a troll, or you're a beta male, or insert the shaming word.
All right, we've been going for an hour. Do you have any final words when it comes to chivalry? Is it possible for a man to be chivalrous in modern America?
Possible, yes. There are dozens of different honor codes we could apply, and most men, on some level, I think, do. It's just a matter of doing so in a society where you're discouraged from doing any of the same, and it seems very much like the world is often out to convince you that your honor codes don't matter. But they do, lads. They do.
See, if there's one last thing I would want to say, it's that I think that men should try to follow the tenets of chivalry, and while it is going to be extremely difficult in the modern world, I feel like if you strive for them and do your best to keep to them, then no matter what happens, it's not going to be a life that you regret.
And if it's not chivalry, then try Jordan Peterson 12 Rules for Life. Try the Code of Hospitality. Just find a honor code that works for you, or make up your own and stick to it.
Because I feel like if you do, then you'll be able to look back knowing that you have done what you know to be right, and therefore what comes, there could be no possible better outcome.
Yeah. Do your best and do it the right way, and at the very least you won't be blaming yourself and saying, what did I do wrong?
You could have done nothing more.
Mm-hmm.
All right. That's it for today. I've been Mystery.
I've been Dalton Mortimer, the Authenticator, and we have been the Duality of Man. Cheers, guys.
Bye, everybody.